I just felt like I was in Saskatchewan. It was just so dry.
Yeah.
And with some of the rock and that, I thought, oh my goodness, I'm in the Badlands.
It was hard to put the signs in the ground, was it, Mark?
Oh, a lot disappeared in the last few days again. It's amazing. Mine don't get destroyed. They just evaporate. Just magically evaporate.
Well, I know a number of mine are missing, but I figure it's because they're made out of wood, they're recyclable, probably good for building shelters.
Or fires.
Or fires.
Plastic ones are no good for that.
No.
You're a kind man.
But they're all recyclable materials, especially if they're from 4 years ago.
Yes. No, that's reduce and reuse.
And they're recyclable to start with.
I'm still trying to figure out a way to turn those chloroplast signs into pizza delivery boxes.
Yeah, you need some good duct tape to make the corners, you know?
Yes.
Or Chris, if you have a nice stereo system, you can use them as baffles on your walls for better sound.
That's true.
Along with the egg cards.
Oh.
Oh, here we go.
Oh,
That's going to be
Don't start us on that road, Mark.
geez.
Sorry, everyone.
Gotta
I'm
get
just,
up,
it'll be a couple more minutes. I'm just admitting a couple people and someone's having an IT issue. So just a couple more minutes.
Okay.
Not
I
a
was the
problem.
guy with it. I had one IT issue, but I'm here.
There he is.
The only young guy here can't figure out the IT. That's a bit ironic.
Well, I tell you, I know a good computer store.
I do need to come down and see you, Gary. Yeah, that's for sure. I'm
Where's that,
overdue
Gary?
Well, you know, I can't really say right now. It's self-promotion on a video. I don't know.
Can I say, Gary? I don't know. I heard of a good one.
Yeah, there you
Downtown,
go.
across from the library. That's where I'll be.
He's got to be careful of corporate sponsorship.
Exactly.
Oh,
That's why I'm not saying.
So just Google him. You won't have to say anything. Oh, again. Oh.
it's been a grind out there. That's for sure. Is being on city council as exhausting as campaigning for city council, Chris? Or
Can be
it can be. Oh my God.
in a different way, but you're still out doing stuff in the community, and sometimes it's frothy and you need to go door to door
Yeah.
and chat with people. So it has the same sort of cadence at times.
Yeah.
And at times there's people that just talk too much.
Yeah.
I guess 2 people are missing because he said 11. didn't he?
Okay, we're gonna get going here any second now. Just waiting on Janice Williams, who's having a bit of IT issues, but I just sent her the link, so hopefully she gets it. And yeah, good evening, everyone. Thank you. For those who I don't know, my name is Tom Stamtakis Jr. And on behalf of the Victoria City Police Union and all the candidates participating tonight, we would like to acknowledge and thank the Lekwungen people, also known as the Songhees, and First Nations, the Esquimalt communities, for allowing us to live, work, and play on their lands. We'd also like to thank all the candidates for participating in the most important discussion on policing and public safety in Victoria. Unfortunately, once again, moderator Richard Zisman won't be able to join us tonight due to an ongoing family health situation, and I will be moderating in his absence. And as mentioned last night's forum, since there's so much turnover in our Victoria Municipal Council, and there are so many new candidates, our hope within our union is that this forum gives viewers the opportunity to understand the goals and perspectives of each candidate specific to policing. Victoria and its policing needs has undeniably evolved over the years, and City Council has a direct impact on the police department's ability to ensure public safety from a budgetary and resourcing perspective. The complexities include increased call loads related to supportive housing and challenges of having high volumes of police membership on physical and mental health injuries, and the Victoria Police Department's challenges with recruitment and retention. We believe that public safety and our officers' safety is paramount to the successful growth of Victoria as a whole. And as such, it's our hope that you find this forum beneficial in voting, and regardless of the different perspectives on policing that exists in society, we look forward to being inclusive to providing a safer community while ensuring a sustainable workforce for our officers. And that being said, let's move on to the first stage of our forum, where each candidate will get a minute and a half to answer the same question. What role do you think the police should play in the community? In this first stage, there will be no opportunity for rebuttal between candidates, and it is focused on candidates explaining their perspectives on policing for the voters. However, there will be an opportunity for discussions in the second stage of the forum, where candidates will be separated into virtual groups, and each group will answer another specific question. So let's lead the conversation with Tony Yakawar. Tony, what role do you think the police should play in the community of Victoria? You have a minute.
Thanks for having me here. My name is Tony Yakover. I'm an entertainment accountant and a first-time candidate for City Council. And my view is that police's role in the community should be investigating crimes, responding to crimes in progress, and enforcing the law. Police shouldn't be tasked with responding to mental health emergencies. We know that Vic PD is short-staffed. We're relying on Vic PD specifically for far too much. I believe we need a regional police force so that Vic PD is better equipped to shift resources around as needed. And I believe we need to be investing in alternatives to policing, like the PAC team that is starting soon, to be able to respond to individual emergencies in the best way possible with the best outcomes possible. I also believe that we need a regional crime prevention council, so that includes police, but also other stakeholders from the community, so that we're better able to address the root causes of crime and not just responding to it as it happens.
Thank you very much for that answer. Next, we have Matt Dell. Matt, you have a minute and a half. What role do you see the police having in the community of Victoria?
Hi, thanks everybody. Yeah, thanks for inviting me here. Police, for me, are responsible for preventing and responding to crime. For me, that includes making arrests, conducting investigations, recommending charges, and I believe, accompanying pressing charges through the court system. So police, do an incredible amount of work in our community, really that most difficult work that no one else wants to do, investigating serious crime. I mean, for me, this involves white collar crime as well, gender-based violence, hate crimes. A really important role for me, police plays on road safety as well. Drunk driving is a massive issue. Road safety, speeding, especially in our communities, it's one of the most dangerous things for me as a family is speeding and poor driving in the city. So, I think tonight what I'm hoping to talk about is a recent Butler Lepard report on repeat offenders, which also said we're asking the police to do too much in our society, that police are there for crime, but we're expecting them to be social service workers as well, which needs to have that burden shared with other service providers across the region. And I'm looking forward to kind of chatting with that and learning from some of the other candidates here. So in closing, for me, just want to say thanks to the Victoria Police Department for everything they do. I think it often goes unnoticed, especially when we are, enjoying a largely safe city. That's how I see it from my community. And if I'm elected, I'm looking forward to working with the Vic PD to make sure that Victoria remains a safe place and a great place for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt. Next, we have Shay Smith. Shay, you have a minute and a half. How do you see police's role in the community? Shay, are you still there?
Off.
He was with us, and I don't know if possibly he got kicked out. We'll move on. We can always come back to him. Next, we have James. James Rassimo, if I pronounced that correct.
Yeah, that's pretty good. James Harasimo here. Thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to be here today. To put the answer very short, safety. Our police are here for the safety of the citizens. That goes to possessions as well as businesses, which I feel very abandoned in this whole situation as well. I know there's a lot of things that are creating problems for the police. Sometimes it's budget, sometimes it's the fact that they're doing their job, but these people are back on the street a couple of days later and they're not being kept where they're supposed to be. And so the police feel like their hands are tied, and there's a lot of frustration, and there's a lot of frustration towards the police feeling like they're not doing their job, but they are. So I feel like we need to focus on making people feel safer and doing things about that, whether it be more police on the streets, them being more visual, and just being listened. And when people have concerns, it feels like they're being listened to. And I'm hoping to get into this a little bit more. I don't want to take up a lot of time in the introduction, but people need to feel listened to. And that's what it comes down to. If your kids have a problem, they want someone to hear them.
10 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. No, like I said, I'm going to get into this more
Okay.
on my second chance to talk. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Next, we have Gary Byer. Gary?
Well, first and foremost, I would have to say that the police need to be there for the safety of all citizens, not just the business people, not just the people who are renting or are homeowners, but frankly, even those who right now, through circumstances, are living in our parks, whether we like that or not, they are there. And the police need to be there. The police at the same time need to be liaison on the street. We used to have a lot more foot patrols. We had the bicycle patrol. And when police are seen, people do feel safer. And frankly, when police are seen, criminals kind of slink away. What I would like to see in the future, yes, is more budgeting for more officers till such a time as we don't need that anymore. Whether that be once this whole pandemic is over and people are housed again, whatever it takes. But right now, I would like to see more budgeting, and I would like to see more police on the streets.
Thank you very much for that. Next, I did have Chris Hanna. I don't see him on my list. Chris, are you with us? Or I don't see him. I can come back. Janice Williams. Janice?
Janice just said that she didn't have the link and I've just emailed it to her again.
Did you? Okay, thank you. We'll come back to her. I tried emailing her as well. I guess it didn't go through.
Yeah, and I just sent her a text telling her that I've just sent it to her by email again, so we'll see.
Thank you, Marge. Thank you. We'll move on next to Steve Orcherton. Steve?
Thanks, Tom. The short answer is to maintain good order and citizen safety through law enforcement, crime prevention, and by necessary supports and aid citizens in need and building community relations. I believe that reinstating and funding for community outreach in schools and within the community is a key role. But it's way more complicated than that these days. In a civil society, we as citizens agree to abide by rules and constructs that govern our human interactions. These then become the norms and standards of normal behavior and conduct for citizens. Some are codified and others are implicitly understood, and all are agreed to. In Victoria, we've seen an erosion of these norms. Contributing factors are political interventions, resulting changes to policing, police reporting, police practices, and ongoing threats of funding and program cuts, and by those who have fostered disrespect for police and policing. Couple that with homelessness and increases in mental health and drug-related calls, along with increases in crime, the situation has become overwhelming in many respects for VIC-PD members and their families, and frankly, the community at large. We need to provide properly increased funding for policing and funding for the province to address and assess mental health and drug addiction and disruptive and negative behaviors. We need to apply the rule of law and the norms that we've all agreed to equitably for all citizens. Police can then focus on their role as law enforcement in crime prevention and providing community relations and supports and aid to citizens in need. It's all about rights and accountability and responsibility and respect between police and citizens and police. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much, Steve. I see Janice is back, but we'll move on next to Chris Coleman. Chris, 1.5 minutes. What role do you see the police having in the community of Victoria?
So I've spent 6 terms on council. I've done walk-alongs and ride-alongs with police officers on a range of different tours, both in Victoria and in the downtown east side in Vancouver. And this is a really complex question. So I might refer the viewers to the first episode of the second season of the True Blue podcast, where I was interviewed on exactly that topic, and we spent an hour talking about it. But the short answer is the 9th principle from the Pelian Principles of Policing, and that's to recognize always that the test of policing efficiency is the absence of crime and disorder and not the visible evidence of police action in dealing with them. That has a profound resonance with proactive policing as opposed to reactive policing. And we need to embrace that. And it has roots into the community that become critically important. So I look forward to greater discussion on this, but it's a critically important topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll move on to Marge Gardner. Marge?
Good evening, everyone. It is the city's role to make sure that we are all safe and that we are protected. And that role, the fulfilling of that role is the role or the job of Vic PD. And as it is actually the city's role to ensure that its citizens are living in a safe environment, it is also up to the city to support Vic PD. The pandemic took us to a safety and fear level of 3 or 4. In the area of town I lived in, the decisions by council took us pretty well to a 10 in fear and problems, and that was right near Beacon Hill Park. And we have undergone a lot. There is still a lot of disorder around us. So I look very much forward to being able to assist police whenever I can to help them fulfill their jobs.
Thank you very much for that answer. Next, Dave Thompson. Dave, you have a minute and a half.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks very much for having me, and thanks for doing this. On the role the police should play, I think it's a really good question to assess the competence of future potential council members. And I will say, first of all, that this question really isn't in council's lane. This is more up to the police board and the police department. But I will say that I've had a look at the strategic plan for the police department, and that's the lens that I use as a governance consultant who advises organizations on how to operate, is to check out the strategic plan. So I expect it received really good input from frontline police officers and from stakeholders throughout the city. There's 3 main elements that describe what role the police department should play in the community. Number 1 is to support community safety, and that's through fighting crime. So there's, having a presence in the community, effective call response, preventing crime by proactively doing work and engaging with the community, and contributing to community vibrancy. The second pillar, I guess, of the police's role in the community is to engage the public, enhance public trust by engaging the public, by collaborating with communities and maximizing transparency. The third element of the strategic plan is more of an internal thing. It's achieving organizational excellence. So that plays a role in supporting police in their role in the community. So when I look at those 3 pillars, I think they're pretty appropriate. I've got a bit of a background with police. I worked for a little over a year in the Crown Attorney's office.
10 more seconds.
I'm a lawyer training in criminal law and procedure, and I have relatives in police, and I've spoken with a number of officers this year. And thanks, Tom, for our conversation. That's it for me.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Janice Williams. Janice, you have a minute and a half, and the question is, what role do you see the police playing in the community of Victoria?
Hey, well, thank you for including me, Tom. Sorry for my late arrival here. The Victoria City Police plays a critical role in our public safety. I see them leading our public safety initiatives collaboratively with our community, building relationships within our community, collecting and sharing data and information on crime, investigating crime, working to reduce crime in our community, working to educate those in our community on road safety and crime prevention, helping to enforce our laws and bylaws when necessary, helping to keep first responders and other members of our community safe in high-risk circumstances, working to connect victims with resources they need to recover from crime, and working to prevent negative consequences from crime, including death and disability. I believe modern policing involves caring deeply about those you serve and working to not just respond to crime, but also working to proactively reduce crime in our community. It's critical our police services have the support and respect they need to fulfill their role in our community in an effective way. And that includes council's support in ensuring that they have adequate resources that take into consideration the unique role that the city of Victoria plays in our region. We aren't just a city of 90,000, we're a regional core, and we're the capital of our province. That brings with it significant challenges and additional demands on our police resources that we need to respect and acknowledge and support as they take on a very challenging task.
Thank you very much for that. Next, we have Shay Smith. Shay, what role do you see the police having in the community? Shay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I think you might be muted, Shay.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Okay, I'm sorry about that.
There you go.
Technicalities. Okay, I just want to say, first of all, that I don't think that we pay enough attention in a day, really, if what we're asking officers to do daily, in the line of duty. I think that, and being human beings that they are, we're asking a high, standard of professionalism. So, I mean, I just want to thank the officers, for doing a good job and doing their best every day. That's high degree of high standard that we hold them to. So, for what that's worth, I just like to say that thanks to the officers. But I just like to say that I believe that there's a lot of dangerous talk about almost criminalizing people with the homeless and whatnot. And I think that we need to move away from that. I think that as well as the police obviously having a high degree of, they're the keepers of justice. They're the keepers of law and order. They also need to build community trust and have community inclusion. And there needs to be a sense of community building and community advocacy and admirals representatives of their community. They need to be the ones who build strength within the community, who see people who see as a positive in the community, people who want to talk to you. I mean, there's a lot of negative animosities going between the police and people right now somewhat. And there needs to be a lot more community building and a lot more togetherness with our police force. I think that's something that definitely needs to be addressed. We need to move away from things, I think, with police and bylaw, attending with bylaw. In Vancouver, they've already decided that they're not going to do it there anymore. And I think that's a step in the right direction. It's not the police's responsibility. It's a bylaw thing, and it needs to stop being criminalized. Homelessness needs to really stop being criminalized. We need to address the issue for what it actually is. It's a housing crisis. It's not a homeless person's
10 more seconds, Shay. 10 more seconds.
Okay, no, I just want to say that we hold the police to a high standard of trust, and we hope that obviously they will continue to prove that trust to us. I mean, there needs to be community building as well, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And with that, that concludes the first stage of our forum. And for the second stage, what we'll be doing is dividing the groups into 3 groups, and each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to answer the same question within their group. So after all candidates have provided their answers, there will be an open discussion period after which where each candidate will have another minute to express a direct rebuttal against another candidate's proposals. So I'll just go over the groups for now so everyone knows. Group 1 will be Matt Dell, Shay Smith, Steve Orcherton, and Marge Gardner. Group 2 will consist of Janice Williams, Dave Thompson, and Chris Coleman. Group 3 lastly will be James Harasimau, Gary Byer, Tony Akwar, and Chris Hanna. So group 1, your question is, the Victoria Police Department has an increased call load related to supportive housing facilities and homelessness issues. What do you propose to be done to help address this? And what will you do to address this? Matt Dell, we'll start with you. You have 1.5 minutes to answer.
I'm not on it, but they sent this so I could listen to it.
Sorry, you're just cutting out there. So this is a question about increased call loads back to supportive housing. Is that right?
I can repeat it. So the Victoria Police Department has an increased call load related to supportive housing facilities and homelessness issues. What do you propose should be done to help address this? And what will you do specifically if voted to address this?
For sure. Thanks, Tom. I mean, my platform is really about accelerating the construction of affordable housing in the city. And I think affordable housing really is the bedrock of creating that stability that a lot of these folks are looking for. Like, I don't see any way that people can recover from addiction, from mental health crises, that type of thing without stable housing. I mean, look at ourselves probably in this room right here. You need to shower every day, you need to eat healthy, you need to sleep properly, and then you can start that process of taking care of your mental health. So, I definitely support the housing first approach, which also includes support. So this year, 2020, we had people camping in parks, not a great spot for anyone that's struggling in life. They were moved into hotels. Again, this was a piecemeal solution while we're working towards proper, supportive, affordable housing. The city this year did something really cool. They passed a rapid deployment of affordable housing, which is going to speed up the construction of non-market housing in the city. Above the new fire hall, we're building 8 stories of Pacifica housing. And these types of units are just so much better conducive or better for people than hotels and sleeping in parks, like getting people back into housing. And it needs to be on a range. Some folks need to be in housing with deep supports in there. That's what's going to be going in across from Our Place Society, where the city purchased a building lot, gave it to BC Housing, 8 stories of affordable housing and 4 stories of supportive housing, with outreach workers on site, harm reduction on certain floors for people who need that kind of stuff.
10 more
so
seconds.
I'm really all in on housing, and I think that Vic PD is going to have an important role to play as part of that, to make sure that type of housing works and has the security and supports on site to make it valuable for the city.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Next, we have Shay Smith. Shay, you have 1.5 minutes to answer. The question was, the Victoria Police Department has an increased call load in attendance related to supportive housing facilities and homelessness issues. What do you propose should be done to help address this? And what would you...
You've given me an idea. I'm listed there.
Okay.
Okay,
Sorry.
I just.
For those, may I just ask, for those who are not being asked questions, if you just push mute, so we're not interrupting others, please.
Well, that must
Okay,
be.
I'll just
Go ahead.
there. So I know firsthand, the reason that a lot of the calls is because the RTA is not followed in the supportive housing buildings, and a lot of these places fall under supportive housing. The first discrepancy is people get into arguments with the workers or whatever like that. They possibly get kicked out. Whatever happens, they get a 72-hour eviction. They don't want to go with it because they believe that it falls under the RTA, which they do. We need to find out what's going on with the service providers in the hotels and why the calls are being made in the first place. What are the situations that are leading to these distress calls and leading to all these calls coming to police? And why is it the police's responsibility to come and play social worker? It's more or less the city needs to investigate what exactly standards that these places are being run by, and are they following residential tenancy law, which they fall under. Of course, they went under something called a program, which is it's a violation really of the reason they're there. So it's really a lot of times it's not necessarily people. They're at their end of the wits, that's for sure. But the cops are called as an escalation or as a last resort of the escalation. And unfortunately, sometimes it's just as a removal service. It's not and they're not. It's unfortunately people are at the end of their wits there, and maybe things escalate. And that's a lot of times what happens is the police will show up and there will be escalation rather than de-escalation and solving of the issue, the problem, and then something where the cops actually have to be involved. Right. So we actually need to look at the human rights. We need to look at the human rights issue of this as well.
Yeah, I'm not on this, but I'm on it.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I'm going to have to mute some people just so we're not being interrupted. But next we'll have Steve Orcherton. Steve, would you like me to repeat the question, or do you?
If you would, it'd be helpful. Thanks, Tom.
Sure. So the question was, the Victoria Police Department has an increased call load related to supportive housing facilities and homelessness issues, which have gone up. What do you propose should be done to help address this? And what will you specifically do as a counselor to help address this?
So first of all, I think that not only police have an increased call load, so do ambulance paramedics and so do firefighters. Everybody's attending to try and help people that find themselves in supportive housing. I think that one of the big problems is some people need a roof over their heads and that solves their issues, and that's appropriate for supportive housing. We don't do a proper triage of individuals. We don't take individual cases and look and see whether somebody needs mental health treatment or whether they need drug addiction treatment or whether they have some very serious issues where they're not able to cope in living relationships with other people and they're a danger to themselves and others in the community. We're not doing that, and we don't have the resources from the provincial government to properly triage people, if you will, when they move into supportive housing. And so the support, frankly, when you move into supportive housing, it is not there as it should be. And then we find ourselves in situations, this community finds itself in situations as the first responders and police and so on, in situations where they're being constantly called to deal with issues that are occurring in supportive housing that really doesn't have any support. And I can't imagine the stress that your members and firefighters and ambulance paramedics are under on a continuing basis, trying to manage situations that are not being controlled internally in supportive housing. We need to address that funding problem to make sure we triage people properly. It's not a municipal responsibility, but we can stand ready as a municipal government to assist the province when they bring in those kinds of resources to support you, your members, firefighters, and ambulance paramedics. I think when we get that in place, that may be it's not an off-on switch here to fix the problem.
10
But we
seconds.
get that in place. I think that may provide some of the solutions that are necessary to deal with recruitment and retention for your members.
Thank you very much for that answer.
Thanks, Tom.
Last thing, group one, Marge Gardner. Marge, you have a minute and a half. Would you like me to repeat the question or do you know it? Marge? Sorry, just if you could just unmute yourself or I can unmute you.
Yeah, no, I
There
unmuted
you go.
me.
There you go.
I just know if don't know if I'm the only one that keeps knocking out, the system keeps going down. I mean, I don't usually have that happen. We've gone a bit backwards. The official community plan and the commitment years ago was a 5-pillar approach. It wasn't housing first, and then it got switched to housing first. And we have not done, I think, justice to really most people who are vulnerable by mixing the homeless with those who are mentally ill and with addictions. We have compounded the issues for many. And I think that I didn't hear the end of what Steve said because I went out the system, but I agree that we have to separate people by what their care needs are first. And I think it's very important that we don't mix this up with affordable housing. People sometimes think that has something to do with it. It does not. This is a totally different issue. We also have to bring in the organizations primarily responsible for those who are mentally ill and addicted, and that is the provincial government. And of course, the health authority, which is part of the provincial government. And so a lot of that has to go forward, which is not answer your question of what can be done for the police, but it's something that council has to do in order to support the police, is bring those other players and make them responsible by not trying to take over their jobs.
Thank you for that. Now that everyone in group one has had the opportunity to answer, we'll go back, and Matt, you have 1 minute to express any rebuttals or concerns that you had with some of your candidates' answers.
I think a lot of us tend to agree here on what's going on, that housing first is an important promote. I mean, I think we all tend to agree here that the provincial government really needs to step up with more services and more, more supports for people that, detox beds is a critical one. I had a friend earlier this year who was, spent about a month waiting to get into a detox bed. And after he did, he's out back and a productive member of society. And people that need a detox bed, there should be something like that right away. It shouldn't be a one-day wait. It should be a, immediate call up. And so we need funding for those services. And the city, I think, needs to work productively with the province, but it sounds like that's what a lot of us were saying here tonight. So I don't really have any rebuttals to anyone. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Shay, do you agree with everyone and what they have to say, or do you have a different perspective?
No, I do. I absolutely agree. One rebuttal I'd like to make is that it is a municipal problem. It's a federal problem. It's a municipal problem. It's a provincial problem. All three levels of government are needed in order to fix this housing crisis. We all have to roll up our sleeves and get involved in this. There was $96 million spent to the CRD. You definitely, absolutely, addiction services are needed. We're in an opioid crisis. We actually, we can't wait. People are dying daily. We're losing 5 to 7 a day. And we have no time to really talk about it anymore. The action times for action is now. We're in a crisis. We're in multiple crises: human rights, housing, and an opioid crisis. So the time is now for action. Absolutely, it is a municipal problem. Absolutely, it's at all three levels of government. Yeah, no, absolutely. I do absolutely agree. We need to look at how we can stop these calls from happening at a service provider level, not making it a criminal level where the police are involved anyways. They can actually go and do more productive things.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Steve?
I don't
What are
really
your
have
opinions,
a
if
rebuttal,
any?
but not a rebuttal per se, Tom, but maybe a bit of a follow-up. We really have to start doing, as I said, the triage. And Marge is right when she talks about it being an island health issue as well. It's not just the province, it's province through island health. A lot of folks find themselves not being treated properly and not being addressed properly through the healthcare system with mental health issues and drug addiction and so on. There's another facet to this that we need to discuss, and it's a difficult one. We've got these unprovoked attacks going on. And I read today, 9:30 this morning in Pandora, 900 block Pandora Street, the police attended. One person hit another person in the head with a hammer. The person was arrested and then later in the day released on their own recognizance. We have to deal with that. The provincial government is wrestling with right now. It's a topic that's in the legislature in question period and elsewhere. We have to deal with the prolific offenders who keep because they keep appearing as well in supportive housing. And those are the calls that you end up having to deal with.
Thank you very much. And lastly, Mark. Mark, do you have anything to add or anything?
Oh, it's fine. I'll lose my connect soon. Let's go on.
Okay. So next we'll move on to group 2 then. Group 2, your question is, the Victoria Police Department currently has just over 20% non-deployable due to occupational stress injuries, physical injuries, medical leave, training, and other factors. What can the City of Victoria do and the councillors do to help support police members in their roles? Janice Williams, you have 1.5 minutes.
Thank you for this. It's tremendously challenging when 1 in 5 of your workforce is out for a variety of reasons. And in part, we need to look at the reasons why they're out due to occupational health and safety issues, and look at the driving causes behind that to hopefully come up with a strategy in conjunction with the police to address the main drivers behind that. I think there's a lot of things that we can do on the non-police end in terms of fostering a culture of public safety and crime reduction in our community to help carry the load of the police service. I think we need to look at expanding the hours and availability of bylaw. When a bylaw infraction happens after hours, sometimes that goes to the police service. Maybe looking at that might be an option in terms of enabling the police service to do better with what it has. I think we need to acknowledge that funding in line with the consumer price index and economic measure might not be an appropriate way to consider funding for VicPD, given its unique role in our region, and that we need to look at our demographics and our population composition and give funding increases that reflect those very specific challenges that VicPD face in our community. I think
10 seconds.
To work with our service providers and ask ourselves, how can we work to provide safer shelter spaces? How can we do a better job of triaging those environments and ultimately working towards crime reduction?
Thank you. Next, we have Dave Thompson. You have 1.5 minutes to answer. Dave, would you like me to repeat the question?
Sorry, no, that's okay. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, it's a really big problem. I mean, the effective available staffing numbers are lower. There's going to be higher overtime, higher costs, and so this is more than just approving budgets. I think we're going to need to look into community-led crime prevention programs. So these are happening all across Canada and all across the United States and in other parts of the world too. And it's a process that brings together police and street communities, service providers to have a look at what the actual causes are in a particular location, because there are some common causes like the underfunding of social services and the underfunding of mental health care over the last 30 years. But there are some specific things that we can do, and it's very much place-based. So community-led crime prevention is one piece. Another is the sort of alternative incident response mechanisms that we've already got and that we're about to be starting and piloting with new provincial funding, where we're involving social workers and healthcare workers in appropriate cases, obviously not high violence situations. Handoffs in hospitals, police officers shouldn't be sitting there for 8 hours. And then I really want to support what Janice actually said there at the end about housing. We need to be housing the homeless people, and we need the full continuum of housing. So council needs to approve housing faster. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Lastly, in group 2, Chris Coleman, you have 1.5 minutes to answer.
Thank you very much. I think there's a range of things we need to do. The easy answer is to say hire more police. But I think we also need to put it in context. A number of suggestions have been made that are good, but the overarching one, when we deal with a lot of the issues we've been dealing with, 20 years ago, we went from a 4-pillar approach to a 3-pillar approach, and we hived the enforcement pillar out of the equation. So I think it needs to be brought back into the discussion. And then we need to recognize that locally, we need to solve the conundrum of Victoria Esquimalt policing, and that's always a discussion point, and the need to get to regional policing. We need to embrace much greater support for the police officers. I think we have 249 sworn officers. That also means we have another 125 staff who support them, because it's 1 staff for every 2 police officers. I think actually we do need some more police officers, but we need to put it into the model of community policing and community-based responses that work with police and don't hive them off into a subsection.
Okay, thank you very much. So now that everyone in group 2 has had the opportunity to answer, Janice, do you have another minute to express any rebuttals or concerns or any other topics maybe that someone brought up that you think is worthy of adding on?
I would just like to really stress the importance of building bridges. I think many candidates here have said that we need community initiatives, but we need those initiatives to work in collaboration with our police services. And I sometimes worry that there's an anti-police culture among some service providers that really doesn't help when it comes to fostering trust in that service. And when it comes to knowing that the police are there for us to protect us and are a resource that everyone should feel comfortable accessing when needed, because they are the public safety experts in our community. So I would just really like to applaud the candidates taking our crime problem in our community seriously, and especially those that are calling for a restoration of all pillars and who are recognizing that when housing first becomes housing only, it fails.
Okay, thank you very much. Dave Thompson, you have 1 minute for any rebuttals or additions to anything or to touch on anything someone else said.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm also seeing a fair amount of agreement here. And in this group, some fairly reasonable people reaching agreement on the problems and a lot of the solutions. I will say that in the outside of this room, and particularly in social media, you see a lot of people trying to make a political football out of this. And I think it's far too important to be doing that. There's a whole lot of attack politics and gotcha politics going on Twitter. And I really wish that the broader public conversation could adopt the tone of this conversation, which is constructive and useful. That's my only thoughts.
Thank you. Chris, any last words for your group? Any rebuttal?
Yes, not rebuttal, but more color to the narrative. I think it's important that whoever makes up the new council, excuse me, they spend some time doing ride-alongs and walk-alongs with police officers at different times. And I also think it's important to recognize the roots into the community that we do have. So look at the CPN, the Community Partnership Network, that Vic PD are already involved in with the Intercultural Association. I would like to see more roots into the community through school liaison officers, but I recognize that's a budgetary constraint. So it's the way we set those roots back in, so there's the next generation grow up with a safer community and a respect for all police officers, all service providers.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So next we'll move on to group 3. Group 3, your question is, in Statistics Canada's 2021 Crime Severity Index, Victoria was identified as having the highest rate of severe crime in the capital region and the highest for municipal police departments in BC. What are your plans to help address this if elected? James, you have 1.5 minutes to answer.
Sorry, just take you off mute there. Yeah, I think it's something we've been talking about here, and we all agree that the police force needs to be supported by the council. I felt like in the past that wasn't happening enough. Big part here is just trying to regain that trust that people have on the police. I feel like they've been painted in a bad light, and I really feel like they're doing everything that they can. So it's important for us to bring that trust back. I think that we can do a lot of little things. Like Chris mentioned, the school liaison officers, I think is a fantastic idea to get that trust started at a young age. And I know that kids are going through a lot right now with bullying and all kinds of things. So having those officers there playing basketball and taking part in events and getting that trust back at a young age is an amazing thing. I'd like to have it possible that people can reach out to the police a little bit more often, and when they see things going on, they can actually get a hold of somebody when there's situations where it's not a 911 call. Maybe it's a 7-Eleven call. If you see somebody passed out in front of the 7-Eleven and you're worried that maybe they're in trouble, maybe you can call a different number. Same thing if you see mental health problems. Right now, you can't really call the Victoria Police and talk to somebody. You get to talk to an answering machine. And I think people feel like they've been forgotten. And I feel like people want to feel like they're part of the solution. We've got 90,000 people in the city, and they've all got a cell phone on them. And if they can see a guy who's looking a little sketchy, looking around the cars, and get that call in ahead time, and the police can zip out in 3 minutes and just kind of let them know that they're there, right? And that's what people want to know. They want to know the police is here. We don't need to spend a lot of money. We just need to listen. That's all people want to do, is they want to be heard and they want to feel like something's being done. And I guarantee we're all going to get something done. We're all on the same page here. We all want change. So let's let the people know that we're here and that we're listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gary Beyer, you're next. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I think I'm good with it.
Okay.
Getting back to one of the things I stated earlier, funding, and this is an interesting one. I did listen to the part of it last night, and one candidate said Victoria Police have received enough funding to keep up with inflation over the past 8 years. Well, frankly, crime has surpassed inflation. And we do need more funding for the police till such a time, as I said earlier, we get things under control. And frankly, I don't think we're going to be able to get things under control and reduce the crime index until the province and the feds come to the table and do their jobs. And as city council, I think it behooves us that we exert as much pressure, let's call it gentle pressure, as possible to make sure that they are doing their jobs so our police can do their jobs.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Tony, you're next. Would you like me to repeat the question? You have a minute and a half.
No, I'm good. Yeah, so I've pulled up the crime severity indexes here, and I'm looking at, so Victoria in 2021 had a CSI of 148. BC overall had an average of 93. And the Victoria region, the capital region, had 71.5. And so what that says to me is that the municipal boundaries here are not serving us well, in that we need to be able to shift resources around the region. And so that's why I'm advocating for an amalgamated police force. I think it's really important that we're able to look at the region as a whole. We're able to move resources around as needed. You know, we've got people coming in. We're the downtown core. We've got people coming in every night, going to clubs downtown. And the reality is a lot of these people are coming from outside of the city of Victoria. And so we need to be able to shift resources around responsibly. And we know that we've got a staffing crisis. We're talking about adding more police. Vic PD is having trouble hiring enough police. We need to be dealing with using the resources that we have available within the region as efficiently as possible. I'm an accountant. I love looking at budgets and thinking about how we can be doing things as efficiently as possible. And to me, we've got to use what we have in the region. Let's amalgamate the police forces. Let's work together as a region. Let's shift the resources around to be as effective as they possibly can.
Thank you very much. So now that Chris Hanna is not here, so we'll move on to the next stage where each person will have an additional minute to either a rebuttal or conversation in regards to something that was said. James, you have a minute. Is there anything that you wanted to touch on, whether it be regionalization, etc.?
You know, I feel really comfortable with the people that we've got in charge of running our police right now. I feel like the best that we can do is be supportive of them. We need to work together with the mental health, whether it's a mobile mental health team that can be sent in lieu of some of these police forces. But I'll just be here to continue supporting. I think that, like I said, we've got a really great mix of people on City Council. I'm going to support the good ideas, and I think we're looking at we're in good shape. So I'm not going to waste anyone else's time. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Gary, an additional minute to touch on others' comments or rebuttals? Oh, you'll have to unmute yourself, Gary.
There we go. About that computer store. The idea of a regional police force, obviously, it's being explored. It has to happen. Right now, it's not happening. And we have other police forces who obviously don't want to give up their resources. Otherwise, they'd say, hey, here, have a couple for, the night. Let's help you out. Until such a time, it comes back down to effectively, we need to fund the police better. We need for them to be able to do their jobs until such a time as we don't need them to do their jobs. And as Chris says, that is one of the best way a police force can be seen as not having crime. And until such a time, yeah, we need more funding, more police, and we need to be able to enforce laws. We need to end catch and release with the province. There we are.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony. You have another additional minute for any additional comments or rebuttals against your other candidates.
Yeah, I just briefly want to touch on that last point. It's great to talk about adding more police, but we've been trying to there's been a $20,000 signing bonus, and we're still unable to attract the police officers we need to the region. I totally understand the point about other municipalities, their police forces might not want to participate in this, but that's what I'm going to advocate for. We got to advocate for that with the province. And I think that's the way to go in order to move the resources around in a way that's most effective.
Okay. Well, thank you, Group 3. Well, that ends our second and final night of discussion specific to policing and public safety in Victoria. I will give the opportunity for any candidates who, Mark, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm very much, I'm live. I'm very much worried. I like the comments, except I'm worried about the short term. The reason I'm worried about short term is I still got a bike shop right next to me, and I got real noise of real crime. And I'm sorry I was distracted a few minutes ago. I'm going to read you my text I got when I went to turn off my text. And it's not here, but it's by my daughter, who just sent me this text. Armed robbery suspect under arrest and won't get out of his car. Negotiator has been repeating herself for half an hour. Heard a couple gunshots. Louise Emily, that's her husband and her 3-year-old, were out on a bike and access to the building. They can't get in, of course, because of the bike room. And they came in under the door, but we're safe. And we hope we're gonna get some sleep tonight. It's real, guys, this is real. Now, this wasn't here, but it's real. And it's real, and we need short-term action, and the police need our support. And I'm not too worried about my grandkids getting the policeman at the school. It's great, but right now we have to solve the problem we have right now, which is crime all around us. And I know a lot of you live in areas that don't get it. My neighborhood gets it big time. And as I went door to door, I discovered a lot of people have no idea what's been going on down here in my neighborhood. And that's one reason I'm running, because I realized that when I was with the VCAN group, they weren't acknowledging it either.
Okay.
We have
10
to deal with the problems we have. I'm sorry, Tom. This
That's
is
okay. No, you get 10 more seconds.
Okay.
Everyone will have their
this is what
opportunity.
I'm dealing with now.
Thank you. Matt Dell, I think you had your hand up next. Go ahead. You have a minute and a
Yeah,
half.
sure. There was a lot of commonality here today about crime. I think we largely agree with that. I just want to share 2 additional thoughts that we didn't get to talk about. One, I spent the last couple of days standing on the corner of Yates Street and Douglas Street, and one of the most common things I heard downtown was noise pollution. And I think this is something I'd like to work with the police on. Incredibly noisy downtown. And of course, this isn't a criminal thing, but it's just an urban anxiety and urban stress thing. And I think for me really adds to this feeling of insecurity downtown, of just the incredible noise. And I'd like to, work with the Vic PD to talk about ways that they could help enforce against noise pollution in the city, because that does add to this feeling of insecurity. Another issue that we do need to tackle as a council is, I have kids in school. I can see kids from troubled families right now in kindergarten, and you could see the path that they've gone on. We've all went to school with these kids. Victoria, we don't have a new rec center. We don't have an outdoor pool. We don't have a water park. We're not investing in community programming. And we really need to refocus as a city and make sure that we are properly funding this community program. Because if there's a kid that's coming from a stressful home, that's not having a supportive environment, and there's not a rec center and not a community center for them to go to and maybe, be mentored by a coach, be mentored by other families, this is how we start catching these people who are going to become, committing crimes later in life. So it really starts in the municipal role of creating great public services, great parks, great recreation centers. And I think that's something that we also need to remember as we're
10
working
seconds.
to an inclusive approach on safety. And thank you, Tom, for organizing and for the Vic PD tonight. It's been a good conversation.
Thank you, Matt. Next, we have Dave Thompson. Last words. You have a minute and a half. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks very much again for organizing this. And as I mentioned before, I think there's a fair amount of overlap in some of the views. And I wanted to raise a key one, and I want to address this to the actual candidates who are on the call, as opposed to the audience. I'm wondering if we can all get behind a statement asking for regionalization of policing, or at least provincial funding. I would like for that to be the media story about tonight's discussion, is that we can actually work together and that we can propose solutions that we all know that we need. So I'm just wondering if people are willing to support that, if we can have a little show of hands to say who does support regionalization or provincial funding.
I think if you wanted to go ahead and show your hands, or even after in your platforms on social media and other platforms, I think that's a good method of doing it. Yeah, but
Thanks.
I do appreciate that. And I think next we have Janice. Janice, I think your hand up next. Go ahead. You have a minute and a half.
Just a few highlights. Right now, I think many people have experienced crime, and unfortunately, many people know what it's like to be a victim of crime. And in part, I wonder how we can better support those victims of crime, because it is gut-wrenching to be on the end of your home's been invaded and you feel like you have to move because you no longer feel safe. You've lost family members to crime. And how do we do a better job of standing up for those victims? And I think part of it is, how do we have a culture of public safety, a culture of respect for this place? And how do we start ending crime-friendly practices? Things like not reporting crime because you don't think it doesn't matter, because it does. When crime doesn't get reported, it doesn't get picked up on the statistics, and it gets dismissed. Well, it's not a problem. Our stats are going down. What are you saying? It's a problem. Meanwhile, gee, another bike stolen. And I think we have to go, how do we end people being anonymous in our community? Because that's a crime-friendly practice. People don't commit crimes against those they know. How do we get to know our community better? How do we end the practice of painting the police as some kind of enemy? That's a crime-friendly practice. So we need to move towards an anti-crime culture where crime isn't welcome. And I really
10 seconds,
applaud
Janice.
everyone here. And I would support a regional police service. On the same token, I understand why other communities might really hesitate at this time.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next, we have Steve Orchardson. Go ahead. You have a minute and a half for last words.
Thanks, Tom. I really think that we need to work through our police board with the chief and the administration in the police department and establish some immediate priorities that need to be addressed. And I think it's the equitable application of laws and rules and the norms that we all agree to in our society. And you know, we're in a never-ending cycle here because we're trying to apply police resources to healthcare issues. The police cannot solve and not achieve the goals they want to in trying to address concerns that are arising out of mental health issues and drug addiction. We're not going to achieve the goals that we desire, and the police are being frustrated. Our citizens are being frustrated. So we need to recognize that those two issues, the police can deal with criminality. That's their job, that's their vocation, that's what they know how to do. But in dealing with the other issues, we need to get proper provincial funding and resources in place, and we need to prioritize those issues. There's lots of important issues in the community. There's traffic safety, there's noise, there's all these other things that we can look at some point. But first, we need to address the issues around mental health and around drug addiction in our community, and we need to take the necessary steps to deal with those. The police need to focus on their job, and that's dealing with crime, public safety, and making sure our streets are safe for our citizens.
Thank you very much. Next, Shay Smith, you have a minute and a half for last words. Go ahead.
I just hear a lot of talking about, throwing more money at the justice system, more police, more of the same. The more of the same stuff that hasn't worked in the past. We need to take another approach to the way, even the rehabilitation system, even, the prison system and the way people are rehabilitated, the way they enter society. People are thrown out of jail now. They have nowhere to go. They have no money in their pocket. They're literally forced to go out and do crime again. It's our social fabric that's causing these problems. It's not necessarily that people who want to go out there and be bad people or anything like that, or the police that, we need more and more police. It's that we need to fix the core issues of what's actually happening, at the fiber of our community. And that's the way we treat each other. And it's the way we have our social services and have those things in place while people are in school and maybe getting picked on and stuff like that. Because I'm telling you right now, it's just picking them out and just saying, we'll treat them out, treat them nicely now. That doesn't help. Years down the road when the kids turn, into his teens and start to get into trouble, and he doesn't know you anymore. It's a continuous cycle, and we need people to understand that, and we need a fabric that can support these things, so we don't have these people going out and looking to do these things in the first place, and that will reduce crime. We need to actually look at the way that we run our society, and then we stop blaming the police and stop expecting the police to solve all our problems. More police, more problems. No, that's thank you very much. I appreciate it. And thank you very much for having me. I appreciate that very much too.
Thank you, Shay. Thank you. And Gary Byer, last comments. Go ahead.
Yeah, a couple of things to touch on. First off, there was talk of not needing to send police into situations where it's a mental health issue in supportive housing. Well, very much like our city workers who didn't want to and couldn't go into our parks to deal with things because they were being attacked. Mental health officers will also get attacked in some of these supportive housing issues. Secondly, what Shay was just speaking of, that the police are sometimes the bad guys. No, you know what? I was one of those teens that was on the road to a bad path. And because of two specific police officers in Saanich at the time, I kind of got my head knocked a bit and I got straightened out. And it was good. I did leave the country for a while because my uncle in Germany was better equipped to deal with me than my parents. I wasn't a good kid, but because of two specific officers who worked with me, yeah, it worked out. Again, in closing, without the proper funding and without the province doing its job in stopping, catch, and release, and having mental health, having funds for mental health workers, we're not going to get anywhere without giving the police more funds to do their job first. That's it.
Thank you, Gary. Well, on behalf of the Victoria City Police Union, I'd like to
What
thank
about me?
everyone for part. Oh, would you like to go ahead? Go ahead.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. Basically, I just want to say that politicians tend to spend a lot of time trying to say too much in a small amount of time, and they can tend to dilute their message. I just want to say the bottom line here is that I support the Victoria Police, and if it's going to take a little more money to make people safe, then that's what I'm going to do. I spent most of my time listening here tonight. There's a lot of really smart people here, and there's going to be a lot of smart people in this new council. Thank you all very much for being here, and thanks for all the people taking the time to listen. But safety is number one, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, could I jump in there too for my
Sure, of
last
course.
minute?
Yeah, you bet.
One of the reasons I think it's critically important that whoever gets elected goes out and spends time doing ride-alongs and walk-alongs is you understand the stress individual police officers feel as human beings themselves. I've done a number of tours with different officers, and you watch them go through a 12-hour shift, if that's what it is. And most of the time they're easygoing and everything is good and things are going along perfectly. And then an incident happens and they change in a nanosecond into an efficient officer who has to deal with danger. And if governors don't understand that relationship, it shows up at the budget table. And we need to understand that we put an inordinate pressure on our police officers and they deliver great service. Can we review it? Of course, but you need to understand the shoes they walk in.
Thank you very much. Anyone else before we conclude?
Am I on
I can hear you
video
now.
right now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm William Scott. I haven't had a chance to participate. I've been on there the whole time, but I realized that I wasn't being called. So I agree with most of what has been said. I think though there's a huge lag, there can be a huge lag time. Police budgets seem to have been reduced, a lag time in terms of getting where we're going to go. And police budgets seem to be down in some areas for next year, or just keeping track with projected budgets. And I think 1.6% is the amount that seemed to be increased for next year and in one area. And I think that with inflation, with the need to get wage parity, that we need to seek other ways of getting the budget increased for policing. And also, I think that the report, I've forgotten the name of the report. It was just released, but it had a return to bringing back the prolific offender program that was cut in 2012, and it seems to be that most of the things that were taking place with that, things like electric monitoring of people who are released and back out quickly, that allows a more targeted approach on that. In the UK, I was from Scotland, but in the UK, they mention things like sorry, I'm just looking at what I have here. The whole idea of correctional treatment, they call it criminogenic, but in basically involves having a tailored program for someone who goes into a facility. Right now, for these people that have criminal and mental health issues, we don't have an opportunity to deal with them in a local forensic psychiatry place, but we can send them to the one in Coquitlam. If that kind of pressure is put on the province, we will be able to perhaps have some of these facilities built here, including other ones that are specific to mental health, smaller clinics, Gabor Mate type trauma thing, so that individual people that do commit crimes are encouraged to voluntarily accept those programs, and if they not, involuntary. And medical research strongly supports
10 seconds. sorry.
involuntary treatment. Yeah, so I'll end up with just saying that I agree with most of what was said tonight. I particularly with Steve Orchardson, Marg Gardner, and Stephen Andrew, who wasn't here today, but he's got a very comprehensive treatment on this. Yeah, I'll end there. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you very much, William. So in closing, we hope this platform provided voters the opportunity to inform themselves in the upcoming election. I'd like to thank all the candidates for helping out and taking part. We do look forward to affecting change. I mean, there's only one returning councillor. So on behalf of our Victoria City Police Union, we do look forward to having a good relationship moving forward for the benefit of our community and our members. So on that note, thank you very much and have a great night, everyone.
Thank you, Tom. And
Thank
say
you,
a
Tom.
real big thank to Dell, please. Dell is the most
Thanks very
respected.
much, Tom.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thanks. Have a
That
good
was
night.
awesome.
Greatly
Thank
Yeah.
you, everyone.
Great
Thank
listening.
you.